Hello, and welcome to Parasoft Jtest Unit Test Assistant. Today, you will be installing and setting up your IntelliJ IDE to use Jtest and the Unit Test Assistant. First, you will install Jtest into IntelliJ, then activate the trial, and finally, launch the Unit Test Assistant views. So, let's go ahead and get started. You should have already downloaded Jtest and have it unzipped on your system. To install Jtest into IntelliJ, click on the File menu option, then click Settings. In the Settings dialog, click on Plugins. Then we will choose to install the plugin from disk. In the File Browser dialog, locate the Parasoft plugin zip on your file system. It will be located in the Jtest install home directory, then Integration, then IntelliJ directory. Select the Parasoft zip and click OK. You'll need to repeat the steps to install the Jtest plugin as well into IntelliJ. Once both plugins are installed, you'll need to restart IntelliJ by clicking on the Restart IntelliJ button. After IntelliJ has restarted, you will need to activate your trial. To do that, let's go into the Parasoft settings by clicking on the Parasoft menu option, then clicking on Settings. In the Settings dialog, expand the arrow next to Parasoft. There are several preferences that can be set based on the different areas. Let's continue to activate your trial by expanding license and then clicking on activation code. You should have received the activation code via an email. Enter the email address where you received the code and the activation code, and then click Redeem Code. A valid email and activation code pair is required to activate the Jtest trial. If any issues occur when redeeming the activation code, please contact Parasoft. Next, you need to enable the Jtest engine by clicking on Engines and then clicking on the Enable checkbox. Set the install directory path to the Jtest home directory. Finally, let's check the Unit Test Assistant preferences by clicking on Unit Test Assistant. There are several preferences that can be modified as needed. The preference for location of tests is important because this is the pattern and naming convention that will be used by Unit Test Assistant when creating tests. Select the option that fits your standard or naming convention. Again, review the other preferences and change them based on your needs. Remember to apply the settings to save them. To leverage the power of the Unit Test Assistant, you will need to interact with several different views which will provide you with useful information about the code as you create and execute your tests. Launch the views by clicking on Parasoft in the menu option, then Show View, Unit Test Assistant. You'll need the other views as well, so go ahead and launch the Recommendations and Parasoft Coverage views. The Unit Test Assistant view at the bottom is a real-time context-aware view that dynamically changes based on the code you are interacting with. This view contains certain unit testing actions that can be performed to help you unit test your code. The Recommendations view will contain recommendations made by the Unit Test Assistant to help you address certain unit testing issues. This view will populate with recommendations after unit tests have been executed. You can interact with the Recommendations view to quickly apply the recommendations and resolve your issues. Lastly, the Coverage view, which displays code coverage information for a particular project, package, file, or method once tests have been executed. This view will help you identify gaps in your code coverage based on your tests. There you go. Your initial setup is done and you have activated your Jtest trial. Your unit test journey has just begun. Thanks for watching.